So when you're lighting commercial, industrial or education spaces, the main thing you need to look at the beginning is the tasks that are going to be completed in those spaces. So you need to understand not only the size and the area of the space, but also the tasks that will be in those spaces. So for commercial buildings, that can be quite onerous. Often the user of that space is not known when you do the initial designs. So you need to look at and agree really with the building owner what is going to be the best solution for future tenant fit outs in the sort of office world. Retail, normally there's a key aspect of a retail store is known when you do the lighting design. You might do an early design where you're just providing some background illumination to a basic code. And then the retail fit out will come in and it'll be very specific types of lighting. And then once you understand exactly how you're going to use that space, then you can start to think about exactly what lights are going to go where, what aspects of the space you want to really highlight, other aspects you might not want to focus on particularly well. Industrial is quite similar to retail in that you have an end user. So with the input from the end user, once you understand how all those spaces are going to work, what industrial processes are going on, then you can look at how you're actually going to break those areas down and light those areas individually. So it's really the key aspect is to know what the task is in that space. Some of the issues with lighting, historically a lot of people used to overlight, especially in commercial world. Retail world is just inherently over illuminated, but a lot of that comes from their desire to really highlight clothing or products on display. In the commercial world, I think there was a lot of laziness that went on in the 80s and the 90s. People would just put in pan fittings on a certain grid. The same solution would suit every design that came across a person's desk. There's a lot more thought now into actually energy and watts per meter squared, so there's a lot more design, a lot more time being taken over the designs now to get them right, not just one solution fits all. Clients are also really interested in looking at the energy of those designs, and so that they can then take that on to the tenants, whereas 10, 15, 20 years ago, tenants were not really informed, so they weren't really asking questions about what's my lighting level energies, how much am I going to have to pay, if one of these lamps goes wrong, where do the lamps come from? So there's a lot more thought and process that goes into those solutions now. Well, energy efficiency is really a key aspect of commercial design now. Looking into the future, it's probably better to take a step back and look where we've come from. 4 or 5 years ago, we were all breaking into T5s, into office lighting designs, coming out of the fluorescent T8 world. So they're established now. T5s are really the benchmark currently. Most people would start with a T5 luminaire solution for a commercial design. In the last probably 3 or 4 years, LEDs have really made some inroads. They're currently fairly successful, certainly in decorative lighting, small point source. They've made really good inroads into breaking into that sort of dichroic world, the little halogen downlights. Quite successful solutions now. There's just solutions coming through now where we're seeing the first full true solutions of complete LED solutions for office spaces. So that's given us a whole realm of different aspects of lighting design to take on board. LEDs don't perform exactly the same as fluorescents. There's certainly colour aspects of the LED, that the colour of the light that the LEDs produce makes some of the space not feel like it does under a fluorescent light. So you've got to look at the types of LEDs you're using, where are they coming from, what is the actual characteristic of the LED, whereas traditionally you just look at a fluorescent lamp and everybody would know the characteristics of that. With LEDs, the colour rendering and colour temperature of the LEDs is vast. So one LED lamp of a certain wattage is nothing like another LED lamp of a similar wattage from another manufacturer. That's tightening up now. In the future, I think LEDs will become, in the commercial world, very successful once they sort out the actual colour temperature and the colour rendering of the LEDs. The price now is coming closer and closer to T5 and compact fluorescent solutions, and there's already now 1 or 2 designs out there that are achieving incredible watts per meter squared per 100 lux over the commercial world, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years that's only going to improve, and I would see by the end of 2020 LED for office solutions will be the way forward. So the different types of light you have in a space, a lot of, we really call it task lighting, but that's made up of a number of different layers of light. So you have your background lighting, and there's a big movement at the moment in commercial offices to have a lower background lighting rather than try and do all the lighting for the task with the basic lighting in the office space, is to lower the actual background lighting and introduce lights on the desk that pick that lighting up. So then you would have a level of background lighting. You would have dedicated task lighting that's really focused quite closely into those actually tasks that are going to take place. And then you've got architectural lighting, which is really the sort of pizzazz and the wow within the space to highlight certain features. Sometimes the task and the architectural can all be the same, similar luminaires, and they're all performing slightly different functions. But often you look at the task, the background lighting will provide you the general ambient lighting and the task lighting. And then at the end, once the designs are fully established, then you look at how can we make this space actually look inviting, how can we highlight certain features. So when you're designing a space, it's not just the luminaires that you need to take on board, it's also all the environments around that space, the ceiling, the walls, the floor coverings, and if there's going to be furniture in that space or machines in the industrial space, you need to take into account those aspects so that you can accommodate any shadowing that's going on. Especially partition screens in offices can create a great deal of shadow if your luminaires are spaced a long way apart. So all of the colours can also have a real influence, and the types of materials that those colours are on. We've recently looked at some designs where very creamy wall was placed into it, and we assumed it was going to be quite a high reflectance value, but the cream was placed on a Hessian material, and when we actually measured it, we were getting very low reflectance values off that material. So it's not just colours, it's also the types of material, the type of timber, the colour of the timber, the finish applied on that timber. And carpets can take, there's a lot of movement now towards quite dark carpets, which makes commercial sense, that they don't show up the marks, they don't show up the wear, but they're a lighting designer's headache, because the darker you take the carpet, the less light we're going to be able to reflect back off the carpet onto the ceiling. Integrated fit-outs really help to resolve that, because when you're doing an integrated fit-out design, you can actually take into account all of those tables, desks, and the partitions within that space. Use those in your calculations to throw light back onto the ceilings and really help with the evenness and the level of the light across the space. So there's a lot of factors. It's not just a case of choosing, looking into a space, designing a light fitting, and that's going to suit all aspects. All the aspects have to be taken into account, and when people come in and change fit outs and move desks around, often the lighting is never even considered again, but it can. A simple aspect of changing the partitions between the desks, lowering them or hiring them, can really affect the lighting layout considerably. Well, once you've done a fit out, and you've done a fit out on an existing base build, for example, so you've had the base building lighting in there, you've come in and done your fit out, but you haven't really taken much care of the lighting or reviewed the existing lighting. Simple things that many clients don't do is just to get a light meter and actually measure the light that you're getting on different people's desks. You should get an even level of light on all the desks. So with many fit outs where the partitions are taken into account and there's shadowing going on, some desks can be 50% of what's on the other desks. So it's a really simple task, and a client can do that, and they really have a look at their space themselves before they need to engage a lighting designer. If you've got different levels of light going on in the space, it's really hard for those people to work in different spaces within the building, because they get used to the light. One person's used to got some really bright light on their desk, and the other person is working in shadow. So those things are really, really important. The traditional way and the easy way out of that is to just put more lights in. And I think that over the years that's been the solution. Somebody hasn't had a lot of light on their desk, so they just phone somebody and they come in and they put another light in. Really the correct way to do that is to get somebody to quickly remodel the space, putting into the aspects of the fit out that have changed. Like if you've got pod offices come in, higher partitions, often you get stairs put through between floors. All of those things have a huge effect on the actual efficiency of the lighting. So rather than then just come along and add more lights in, it can be much more beneficial to actually re-evaluate the tasks that are now going on in that space. Are they the same as they were designed for? And to just, with a few minor tweaks, you can probably resolve most of the issues without just adding more and more light. So some of the key aspects we look at when we're lighting or looking to provide some lighting design solutions for a space, a retail space, a cafe or a commercial space, is obviously we've talked about you need to look at the tasks that go on in that space. But then it really comes down to your creative side about how you're going to make the space look and feel great. And there's a lot of work goes on subjectively away from the talking to the clients and about the tasks and what you're actually going to use the space for, where a lighting designer will be thinking about the certain features within that space, like how do you make a cafe look like a cafe and not like a retail store. So there's a lot of, I guess, tips and tricks that the designers pick up over the years. Some are more effective than others. Normally if a retail space, the lighting is really focused on the products. So whereas the luminaires themselves, you can have some suspended luminaires that are actually saying, look at me, I'm a beautiful luminaire, but the retail is really about the focus on the product. So there's a lot more technical aspects go into sort of like retail design. When you get into the world of cafes and bars, it's the complete reverse. It's really about, they're not really trying to highlight products, they're not really trying to highlight the people, they're really trying to make the space look sexy, funky, inviting. And so a lot of those solutions really focus on the actual luminaires themselves, so people feel that they're in a sort of almost a domestic-y environment where they feel comfortable. They're looking at lights that they may recognise, and they'll feel comfortable being in those sorts of, around those sorts of types of lights. And that's moved really, that whole world now has moved away from recessed lights to a lot more suspended lights now. Certainly in the residential world as well, it's been a huge move recently to real suspended lights. A lot of the bars now have actual lights designed specifically for those bars. A lot of suspended lights where historically they would have all been recessed. And the commercial world as well, receptions, boardrooms, transition spaces, breakout spaces. A lot of those spaces now are moving away from the traditional recessed lights in the ceiling to suspending lights, creating an atmosphere in that space, but also the light itself becomes part of the architecture, part of the feature of that space, and is important to link the light that you are going to suspend from the ceiling with the furniture, what type of tables in that space, what's the sort of reception counters like. So there's a whole raft of questions that a designer will ask themselves before they really put forward solutions. And it's not always the first solution or the second solution that is the right solution. A lot of architects will have input into that, and clients, and budget, of course. So good lighting in the commercial world not only has good benefits on energy efficiency, it also has a lot of benefits on productivity. Staff really do need, or anybody working in any space, need good quality of light. They don't need too much light, that it's going to give them headaches, and they don't need too little light, they're going to start squinting. And it's really that contrast of light that you want to try and work on to make sure they've got the right level for the task that they're doing in that space. There's many reports been written where the benefits of lighting within the space, along with other features such as architecture and a quality fit out, making the space have a quality feel, can be very subjective on the people using that space. They may not know why it feels good or why the lighting is great, but if it is good and it is a great working solution, then the productivity of the office or the industrial site will be improved.